Welcome to The Krystal Effect. I'm your host, Krystal Appleby, and I'm here to share honest, wild truths I've learned through being a practitioner for myself and others on this crazy journey of life, career, and relating. I'm not crazier, braver, bolder, or more experienced than others. Rather, I do believe I'm here to share with a deeper level of honesty than most. It's just who I am. Superficiality and mediocrity are pure boredom here, and I do believe the deepest truths and depths of our soul will set us and others free. With an allergy to anything withheld in connection and conversation, we're going to dive right into any limits or lies we tell ourselves, pierced through the mediocrity or fears of diving deep into the truth. I hope to give you an opportunity to reactivate your knowing and zeal for living rather than to be triggered, squander life and joy, and shrink away out of my energy field. But as always, choice is yours. Let's dive in. Today's episode is joined by such an amazing human, someone that I hold so dear to my heart, Kyla Penner. Kyla, thanks for joining me today in such a beautiful conversation. You always know how to eloquently pick up a thread of thought, a conversation, and take it in a beautiful, meaningful, insightful direction. You are not only such an inspiration to me, but whenever I listen to you, connect with you, look at what you've created in your life, in your family, in your business, I'm reminded of possibility, but I'm also put on an equal playing field with you. Never in my experiences or interactions with you have I left feeling inferior, like you're doing something that I can't. Your world, your energy, you only ever open me up to opportunity, to feel inspired by myself, to inspire others around me, and to keep going in the direction of my soul. You have such a beautiful gift that you bring to the world by just being you. This conversation is so much deeper than the masculine and the feminine. This is something that brought our fires alive together when we met a few months ago. And I felt it would be a great topic to dive into today. But really, the root of this conversation is just showing up and leading yourself and trusting that by leading yourself, you're going to lead those around you. You're going to lead your business. And it really actually has nothing to do with the masculine and the feminine, because we all have a different dynamic within us. We all have a different design. And if we're leading ourselves, trusting ourselves, and moving with confidence and certainty, everything else is going to move out of the way. Everything that's not for us, any projections, any noise, and it's going to clear a path. The magical starts to happen. Both of us have experiences in our life. I love that you touch on and share on, these moments happening to you in Parliament, in your business, in your marriage, in blending together what you decide is a family dynamic that you want to create and leave as a legacy for your family moving forward and generations to come. So I could talk forever and ever, but thank you so much for coming into my world, for putting countless people on my path, for always stoking the fire, always stoking and pulling out more of me. That is such a beautiful gift that so few people in our lives, or at least in the past in my life, have done. We dive into the phrase that we both hate so much of "you're too much," and something that's been so deeply ingrained in my past conversations, relationships. And Kyla always calls me up and out, into certainty, into truth, into possibility, into pushing the fucking line in every aspect of your life. And I love you dearly for that. So let's dive into episode 4, the fierce feminine leader. Let's do this. Welcome to episode 4 of The Krystal Effect. Today I have with me a amazing near and dear friend, client, just one of those people that collided into my world, as happens when they're supposed to. Kyla Penner is with me. I don't even know how to describe you, how to introduce you, but you are a powerhouse of a woman. You have pushed red tape, danced with the government to get what you needed and to help others get access to what they need. You just continually show up and amaze me with your knowledge, how well spoken you are, how you enter a room and can speak to whatever needs to be spoke to with whoever is put in front of you. And today I just want to give you an opportunity to kind of fuck shit up, fuck the box, of what life sometimes puts us in. Not that you are a prim and proper person who's not, you're not afraid to speak your truth, but I would say that the world that you work in and kind of live in and what you're building and growing does maybe put at times confounds on how you speak or how you show up. So, with that, our topic today is going to be on something that we kind of riffed about before Christmas in my treatment room about the masculine and feminine energies in business with powerful women and how we've both come across, having these things projected onto us, having conversations where people seem to think that we are too in our masculine or that we could be doing things differently, better, that maybe one day we'll see the light, I want to say, if we step more into our feminine. And so I think that'll lead to an interesting conversation. But I'm going to pass it over to you and just let you introduce yourself a little bit more on the, like, who is Kyla? Who is Kyla without and within the business that you've grown, that you've... I'm so curious. I know you, and yet I don't know you because I don't actually know the backstory. I didn't know you when you were building this or going through your 24-hour daycare, like the process that led you here either. So I'm just going to let you go from here.
Thank you. I'm so excited for this topic because it's something I'm very passionate about. And I also believe I'm a walking testament to all those pieces. So I am the founder and CEO of what we call KP Squared Inc., which is 24-hour innovative childcare. And sometimes I hate the use sometimes of childcare, even though I guess that's the niche of the business. But what we actually have created is a platform to create a new family culture and to support the shift of quality of life for parents predominantly and women, because that is the vast majority of my demographic, and how they show up for themselves in my workplace. And that's one thing that has come to surface even more so in the last year. So I was a teenage mom. I had my first child at 16 years old. I always knew inside of me, even when I was younger, it was like my first husband. I had asked him this question the other day, and I said, when we dated as teenagers, before we knew anything about ourselves whatsoever, what could you tell was unique or different, or how did you feel about who I was back then? Because when I reflect, like, my son is 19 years old now. When I reflect 20 years ago, I don't remember those pieces really of myself, but I was like, something of where I started must have contributed into what I've grown into today. And his response was, "You were always like a little bit quacked." In his, it's just in his form of words. And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, when people say they're different, like, you were always different, not weird, different, but you had such a secure sense of self as a young teenage girl that it was different. And we're not talking about like a cliquey popularity sense of self. We are talking about walking in a space of just knowing that I indeed was going to do great things on a sliding scale, whether big or small, and that I wasn't going to be veered into a different direction. So not being succumbed to peer pressure was a big one for me, even though at some points I tried to sit in a societal norm, I guess. But I always remembered, like, not giving a shit really how others perceived me. At even a young age.
That's one of my favorite things about you. But I was curious. I didn't know that because, like, I was not like that. I put on that front, but it was a total facade. I was actually so sensitive and insecure and all of that underneath. So it's interesting to hear that you've always felt like that. And you felt like that at your core. Yeah?
Mhm. At my core, through like different transitions in my life, I went through like a small piece. I come from like a very religious household. And I went through a phase like in my early, I guess, junior high stages where I was balls deep into scripture with my mom. And I always projected that to an outward lens, even though like it clearly wasn't overly well received when I was younger. And I did not care. Like, I did not care. I was like, no, this is what I'm standing for. This is my core belief at this moment. And I always just worked with it all the time. I did. I always just shoved it out there and didn't care. And something happened, I think I was in grade 9, Brad said, where I had like come and stepped into that year where I was off the religion train and more into the center of self train, where once again, he said your ability to not give a shit about how others perceive you and to barrel through was just something completely different. Of course, now into adulthood, I now appreciate those pieces of me.
Of course.
where perhaps I think what was being viewed when I was younger was um, slightly difficult or confrontational. And I know that coming from a more rigid family, me not being able to be shoved into a box was always a problem. Always a problem child. Always had, it was never bad, but I always like, why can't you comply at this level? Or why do you
Right.
gotta argue all the time? Why do you gotta be difficult all the time?
And I want to like applaud you on from what I've seen. I mean, I've seen such a small snapshot of your life, but how I've seen you parent in this way and like change that dynamic for the next generation. And I'm sure that that is the basis of. I'm sure if I walked into your business, I would see that on a different level too. But seeing you parent in a way where the box is like unfolded, like explore outside the confines of the box, right? And really nurturing that is so beautiful to see because, like you said, most of us, I was in Bible quizzing. Well, I think back and I'm like, I wasn't shoved in that box. I wanted to go to weekends where I recited. There was like things on the seat where whoever sat up first, there was like a censor, and then you had to finish the scripture or whatever. Anyways, side tangent. But
I also remember those days.
yeah, well, that makes me feel better because nobody knows what I'm talking about when I say that.
Oh, I do. I was in Sparks. Okay, little Sparks.
Oh,
So medals for those Bible verse memorizations.
oh, yeah, you got all the little badges, right? Was that must have been like a different sector of religion because I was a no bueno for us. Not that box, but not that box. Um, anyways, I just really can appreciate when I watch parents deconstructing those boxes and those, I guess, rules. Um, one question I have: so your ex, like, he nurture that, or he saw that and he liked that? Did it ever become too much for him?
Mm.
Because I've heard like in business and in relationships, I've come across this where people are like, I love that about you. You go in and you just like, you don't give a shit what people say. And but the same people that say that have been ones that have also not always loved it, or it's like you watch it become a little bit too much for their comforts.
Yeah, like the years of therapy I have spent in the word too much, it's just like I need a rebate card associated to that. And it's funny because that is a word that has surfaced multiple times. And it's a challenge that I have faced internally of never wanting to compromise, but almost grieving when people do say you are too much. And I've always been outspoken in being outspoken and projection are two different things. And typically, when I sit in a place of like speaking outwards about my core beliefs or my values, or like a vision or a trajectory of where I would like to see culture go, is is a space that I sit in from my sense of self. And I find that the too much factor is from those individuals that perhaps like aren't in alignment with that vision per se. And when
What?
it comes to Brad or my current husband, Kyle, and this is very controversial to say, but it's just true, I've never been too much because they sit in a really healthy masculine.
Hmm.
And I find that the men that I've had, relationships with, which haven't been many because I got married to my first husband for a long time, and then, we ended up divorced, and there was only a small stretch before I had started seeing my second husband. But the men that had come in, or even the men that have been perhaps be interested, because having a woman that's secure is attractive. And it's the confidence piece and the lack of insecurities that become attractive. It's until you get there where I find that men are like, no, 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 just kidding, just kidding. And it is because, in my experience, that they're not quite sitting in their masculine or what the healthy masculine would look like. And both of my long term relationships with my first and second husband, they have mastered those pieces of what sitting in their masculine with strong feminine women looks like.
Right. That's beautiful.
Mhm.
That is like also reassurance for me. But
Uh-huh.
but you said, also in the past, I don't know if I was ready to sit next to a healthy masculine fully.
Mhm.
I was calling that in, but was I really? The frequency might have been like, mew, we'll settle for a little less. And then, not less, but there's that sense of security when you're beside a healthy masculine. And it doesn't matter if you're in a relationship with him. You can just be in a room with somebody.
Mhm.
I listened to somebody speak a few months ago, and he stood up, and it was like, okay, yeah, I whatever you say, right? Like I'm listening. I'm here. I can feel this like steady energy. There's no chaotic nervousness, or like it's just certainty in what's being said, and what they're bringing to the table, which is really beautiful. Um, there was somewhere I wanted to go with that. That What does that healthy masculine, I guess, look like to you?
Um, to me, I think the biggest piece is actually communication. It's like every man and every human is going to sit in a place of insecurities or misunderstanding, particularly as we grow. And I think sometimes people underestimate the brain as well. So, like, I love the brain. I love the polyvagal nervous system. I love those lobes and the amygdala and the frontal cortex growth. It's literally what I built the foundation of my curriculum on, is understanding the development. And it's like, we technically don't have adult-sized brains until between the ages of 23, 25, and you have to believe those men are lacking on the 25 line.
Yeah.
And like, and that doesn't include the trauma, that doesn't include previous experience, that doesn't include like family core culture systems, that doesn't include societal norms. And it's like the expectations for men to like come out with this brand new, fully developed frontal cortex, adult brain, and then to have it all together at the age of 25 or 26 is an unrealistic expectation. But what I found was that like the spark or the initiation. So healthy masculine to me is to like serve and protect is like the generic version of
Right.
that. However, it's like with those pieces of serving and protecting is like also to me I look at it as like building a foundation around me. So I speak about all the time with my first and second husband. They have literally built the scaffolding around me to thrive, to allow me to uprise, to allow me to be bold. Like that was their job for me, was helping me build that piece of success.
And I see it as this like scaffolding where you are being like when pieces of when I even think about when you were building and doing the construction pieces for your space now. And I know there was moments where it was like, things weren't being done on time or things needed to be done and people were just coming together to hold that. And I see it so that it's like so that you can keep leading. Because I do
Mhm,
believe feminine is here to lead also.
mhm.
Like they sometimes see what others aren't seeing. Um, so I'm curious, does it come natural to you? I think we both have this piece of us that likes to drive forward and create, and like sometimes you're the one building that foundation. Like for your business, people can be supporting you, but you had the vision, I assume.
Mhm.
You started to build the foundation through your own journey and the dance with the masculine and the feminine. And I don't believe that there's ever like a 50-50, or there's supposed to be a 50-50, or we're supposed to have equal parts masculine, feminine to somebody else. I think that's a load of shit. I think we both agree on that. But have there been parts in your journey where it's been like easier to embrace and drive with that masculine? And then times where you want to like hand that over or have those other people um, just hold and support and put that scaffolding up so that you can either rest into the feminine and just like receive what you've built or go back into your creative genius.
Oh yeah, I've definitely noticed that my creative genius sits in my feminine, and the biggest piece of that is receiving.
Mm-hmm.
And a big of that is like I find with what I'm seeing from the cultural front of women nowadays is that everybody has a choice, but I see women being driven into more of a masculine um, because perhaps they don't have a choice at this point. We're seeing like single motherhood is like in a percentile that we've never have had, broken families, different lines of cultures. We're in a massive economic downturn where women are forced to like return to work or to work extended amount of hours. And people really get caught up in the fair and equal piece, which is complete and utter shit, according to what the societal norm that put in. And I think also with femininity comes the connotation of having to be soft. And that's actually not the case. Some women are feminine in their softness. I am not one of those women. I am feminine and can fully receive in my blunt, loud, outgoing self all on its own. And I don't believe that if I was sitting in a masculine position every day, all day, I would have been able to build the legacy and empire that I have today. And I do think that from a business standpoint, sometimes we have to sit in our masculine, and that is just life. For me, that is natural and free flowing. What I think I had to adapt with learned behavior is the acceptance of that. It's like the acceptance of me having to have an ebb and a flow, particularly in entrepreneurship, which is why it is not built for everybody. And the importance of embracing those pieces and not feeling like a bag of shit if you sit in that masculine energy for too long, and the importance of knowing that so you can rest and receive at a different caliber. Like, I did a lot of lobbying with politics. Like, I had to write a whole legislation for Alberta to be able to pass 24-hour childcare. It's
Right.
like when you start sitting in a land of politics, like I don't get to walk into caucus in my soft feminine self with a room full of politicians and expect them to be like, oh, this kind, cute woman over here is going to change laws. That's super fantastic.
They're gonna eat.
And, you know, like it just doesn't work that way. But what I did notice is that sometimes I had to sit in a masculine energy and be bold. Sometimes, which was more well received, is stepping into my feminine with power. And part of
Yeah.
that was clarity.
There, I was reading in Women Who Run with the Wolves. I just use it as like a tarot book when I'm like, what's going on? Or am I stuck in some projection or belief or whatever? And I opened it the one day because I had actually kind of not attacked somebody, but just very bluntly said, no, this is how it is. And you will never cross that line with me again. And I
Mhm.
opened it up and it was really about, the time for anger and like how the rage can come through the feminine. And that is a piece of how the feminine moves. It's that like primordial, it has to come out, right? So that's something that I think we talked about, that what is the feminine energy? I had somebody say to me recently, like, don't write it off. You might be wearing flowy dresses like me and, with flowers in your hair and all the fucking shit. Cool. But is that really how we have to define the feminine? Like, that's a piece of it if that fits. But I don't think you and I are going to sit in a field of wildflowers and put on a pastel colored dress and want to just like flow back and forth. Like, when I think about, that's not a photo shoot I want to like step into my feminine, own it, have pieces of me that are soft and like receiving from the masculine, but also I do think there's that piece. It's like you said, not everybody's built for entrepreneurship, but maybe the ones, those of us who are and who are pulled towards it and love it, and like there's a piece of that game that I love playing, and it's not all this masculine. It's because you get to weave and ebb and flow and decide what needs to come forward, and then the creative piece comes forward once it has structure and feels safe enough to like actually have this space to come. Um, so yeah, maybe you want to speak to that. That piece of redefining to us what the feminine is, because I think we've both done work with in the energy or intuitive world where the masculine means this, the feminine means this. We need to heal this feminine so that we can step more into it and blah 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 blah.
It's like, why are we blanketing that term?
Yeah, thank you.
It's like I literally built a foundation on a business with every family has a story. So when we talk about the inconsistencies of fair and equal, and I do the same thing for my staff, what one person needs or means or is nothing like the next person next to them. The child, the family, whatever the case may be. We cannot blanket feminine and masculine energy. Like, we absolutely cannot. It shows up differently in every single human based on our design and based on what the trajectory we want to head in.
Absolutely. And I come from, for many years I think I thought I had to like heal this feminine piece of me because I come from a strong motherfucking mother.
Hmm.
And I used to, try to dissect that and be like, oh, how do I make sure that I don't? And it's like, I look at, that's a piece of who I am. Because the reason that my mother is that way, when I was 4 months old, my dad died of cancer. And she, like, that masculine structure that she had, and I mean, I think she's always been a strong woman, but a piece of your life is removed, right? And what do you go into? Survival mode. You have 3 children.
Mhm.
You have these pieces. Of course, you became a strong motherfucking woman because life demanded that of you. So I think sometimes we need to get out of, it's like you said, there is no black and white. I always go back to like, yes, the foundations of, Adam Roa talks about how the foundations of life come from, goes back to ones and zeros, like binary code, the feminine, the masculine. And I always go back to TCM with, it's the same with yin and yang, right? It's like the feminine, the masculine. I
Mhm.
think that's just a thing for simplicity. Like there, the yin and yang, yeah, there's black and white. There's no gray in between, but life, it's like I think you've said this before. What's your saying?
Living in the gray.
Living in the gray. But there's just no gray on the yin and yang sign, but it's just for basis of simplicity.
Mhm.
It's like you learn something in school, but it's so that you have this foundation and understanding so that you can go out and mix it up. So it's like you said, it's like I came from that, and then that's who I was meant to become. That's how I was, the feminine was, I don't want to say, I guess, modeled to me.
Mhm.
But then you go out in life and you get to decide through experiences and who you are here to become. And I don't think that I would be where I am either if I just sat back and really stepped into receiving and I would never be satisfied without having that beautiful masculine energy that comes through and sometimes just get shit done, man.
That's what it is. It's the getting shit done. And it comes down to it's just not for everyone. I also had a mom that like modeled very strong. She same thing. She was a teenage prodigy of teen pregnancy and uh graduated high school, took me, moved to a new city, continued post secondary between just her and I. My dad was in another city, also working and going to school, and she just got shit done like all the time without a thought. It's like those organic pieces flowing through. I do not believe even stepping back into like the feeling of what I felt as a child wasn't ever masculine. It was just strong femininity. And perhaps like she, I think, lacked a little bit on the sense of self, but she understood enough on how to move forward in that space.
Mm.
Um, and I love that piece of modeling that was given to me with now currently what I learn, I guess. And it's just I look at her and I was like, never in a million years would I ever think of anyone saying to you, you're too much because you got shit done on a timeline that you and the universe wanted and how that aligned instead of constantly waiting. And I think like part of us too, like initiation is part of who we are. I know it's created within my HD. Like initiating is big. I am a creator. I am creator. I initiate. I don't create the systems.
I'm not, are you a manifester? Is that why?
I'm a generator.
Oh, you're a generator, right? I
I'm a
did.
generator. And it's just like part of my gene key is just the bright idea of that. And it's like when it's the process. So when my business was being built, it was illegal in Alberta. Like 24-hour childcare didn't exist. It was
Something
like a big hoo-ha. Yeah, the government tried to shut me down. They even handed me over a lawsuit. Like we went to court, like the whole big system before I was able to break through and they allowed me to create at that caliber. Um Me with a barrette in my hair and a flowy dress in a flower field would not have allowed me to step through into that war zone. And I would actually like reflect back on if you do reading or understanding of some of like our ancestral days in the Viking days, those women were such badass bitches back in the day. And yet the poise that they had, and when you read like different ancestral lines about their heritage, how they cared for their families, how they showed up like as mothers, how they created with their children, and yet we're still so strong in themselves and their foundation. They were still feminine women.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I even, as you say that, I'm thinking, yeah, my mom was on the forefront protecting us and making sure that nobody was saying shit to us at school, or like I hear these stories, but yet she would also pull me out of school because she knew loved spring clothes shopping, and we'd go buy I hated the flip flops that made the right sound, and she could never pick out the right ones. And I think back, and it's like there was so much deep love, and like it's not like that piece was missing, but to the forefront. And I know like people in certain parts of our family, I know that they judged what was going on, like what they're seeing on the exterior, seeing
Mhm.
that strong feminine. And I know those same people do it to me when I show up at family gatherings. And I had a conversation with my mom about it because I think I always thought like we've lived very different lives, played different roles. She got married really young and had a family, and she'd lost a husband by the time she was 30. And here I am. I'm like, I can't even catch somebody who remotely reflects a fucking husband. But we were having a conversation because I'm like, I didn't want to go to Christmas. And I was like, just entertain me. And she had such a beautiful reflection of, she's like, Krystal, they're jealous of you. You don't give a fuck what they think or what you say in response to their silly little banter or projections or what. You just shut that down. And I was like, oh, well, that's what you always did. And it was to like protect her family, or like stand up for something that somebody was crossing a line with. um so I think sometimes it just maybe seems different because it's like, I guess my business became my baby, family, whatever. um but yeah, that feminine shows up in so many different ways. And I definitely think along my journey the last few years, Was there times where I was too in my masculine? Sure. But is that actually just part of our journey to discover and like swing in? I have photos. I did the thing with the flowy dress and was like, oh, maybe this is who I am with the braid and the da da da. Maybe it's all just like an exploration. You swing over here, you're like, yeah, okay. You swing over here, and then you get to weave it all together. And maybe we just do that for life, whether it's, you know, not just the masculine and the feminine, but it's like running a business. When I opened my business, I'm sure people love me way more because I was more in my feminine. But in reality, I had no fucking voice. I was too scared to speak my truth for fear of losing followers or clients or them actually knowing the truth of who I was. So I was just sitting here, kind and polite and loving all and bringing love and light because I was too afraid. So really, it's like, I think you and I are here. Yeah, we might shake shit up and some people might not agree with it, but to really actually reveal the truth of what the feminine can be.
Yeah, but using our voice is feminine.
Thank you. Yeah, because
like that is foundational to a T of femininity, is using our voice.
But how often
part of being secure in self, I think, and not giving a shit about the perception is I always come with the intent to speak from a place of love, even though it may hurt, right? So how you choose to receive is one thing. Perhaps it can put me into check to be more conscious about how I say versus what I say. So that is the free flowing of the demographic on why I'm able to show up with so many different hats, I think, from a different forefront. How I speak to parents and families, how I speak to a political forefront, how I speak with you and my sister and my best friend are very fucking different, but it all means the same thing.
Absolutely. It's all truth, right?
It is. It's all truth.
To look at
So
somebody
like we lose those pieces of femininity when we are having to mask and sit in a place of resistance.
totally.
And we do live in a culture where people are juggling around what masculine and feminine energy is, and you know, the suppression of a voice at a certain caliber. So the stigma around what femininity needs to look like is not the true definition. And that's where we see ourselves get lost in like a feminist movement as well, right? It's like if women just owned who they were, like in that moment, was able to speak at that caliber, we wouldn't need the 500 movements across the board. We would just be beautiful, wonderful, feminine women who sometimes I can look like Cinderella and sometimes I do not.
Thank you.
And
You
like
get it.
it is, and you're right about it coming down to what positions we play in each life. I am very different than my siblings. You know, I have both powerhouse women, both very powerhouse women, looks very differently. I have one sibling who takes what a traditional or what society would view as femininity to the 10th degree on the other side, because that is what she loves and that's the pieces of her that she embraces, and that's what brings her the most joy. It's like she loves those pieces. She looks at my life and wants to croak. That is not for her.
Exactly.
And I love and admire those pieces of her because once again, it comes down to like, I don't want what you have, you don't want what we have or I have, but the embracement of that between us both and the admiration for both of us stepping into what our truth is on that weave, that is what's admirable. And our space would look very different if we did that for other women around us.
Yeah, on all ends of the spectrum. I mean, to think, you know, that boss entrepreneurs, 7-figure, whatever, like the business, I don't want to say, but like the corporate coaches in that kind of world, they as much need to not look at the woman who is raising a family fiercely and see, like, they need to see the equal dynamic and the equal importance in them as much as the other way around. But how do we level that playing ground? And I mean, I guess it's really through what we're doing, I think.
I also think it's modeling. I think I use this with children all the time. Like, as I train new educators, I don't come from a traditional childcare background. So like I am the most uneducated educator from those traditional norms of my life. From those pieces. But one of the biggest steps is it's modeling. I do it for my staff, I do it for my families, I do it for my children. When you live within your secure self, like, fuck, that is a beautiful piece of inspiration for people wanting to step into themselves.
And it's just palpable. It's magnetic. We both have that generator aura. It is literally, people are just magnet. You know it. You walk down the street, you're walking to work, you walk wherever you are. And as you actually model and embody that, you just feel it. You're like, okay, that's my sign now. I walk into a store somewhere, and if the store fills up or I'm out for a walk and people keep saying hi, it's like, okay, I'm embodying who I'm here to be. Because
Mm-hmm.
I know that everything comes to me. These pieces, it just becomes laughable because everything's just literally coming to you on a silver platter in a sense. It's like the confirmation, that everything, that any doubts you have, people are there to be like, wow, did you know this? It's like, I did, but thank you for reaffirming that.
Um, it is, and I also believe that, like, me standing in that place attracts those others individuals that don't have similar aspects to me to allow me. This is coming from like an entrepreneurial front because I'm very multifaceted, like 4 corporations, multiple programs under an umbrella. And what
Mm-hmm.
I found is I went from having like 2 employees to 45 employees over the course of 5 years.
It's wild.
Not everyone can receive me at the caliber I want them to receive. Part of that is because my first 10 employees, I was incredibly hands-on with. There was like a lot of like actual physical modeling, where I was hand and side by side. And I attracted those people that really loved, respected, embraced, and adapted to how I show up in myself. And I would always say to my staff, like, the best thing you can fucking do is please, for the love of God, show up the best version of yourself for that day. Like anything outside of that. And part of that was for me to understand and to get to know you on a level about what you can and cannot receive, where your boundaries are, etc. And that's how I essentially like cultivated strong leaders. And my business partner is like she would sit in the more of what you would call, or society would call, the more similar femininity side. Yeah, she's a bit softer, she's not as loud and as outgoing as perhaps me, but fuck, like, we make a beautiful pair. We make a
And
beautiful pair.
she
Like,
has a fierce feminine streak in her. And I
she
think
does.
you really inspire and like naturally, I don't want to say help her heal, like, but like give her that space to allow
It
that
is, yeah.
forward.
It is the space, and it's like, um I see her naturally using her voice more and more and more as that space continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But even her language, how she speaks, is very different. What I found now is that as we get bigger, like we have 45 staff now, like we'll have to increase that as my business continues to grow. It's like she has also attracted a caliber of women that perhaps resonate with that piece of femininity versus mine,
Absolutely.
that are able to allow my other branches of my business to grow based on like that vortex.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like neither of us are any less feminine from each other.
I was going to say, and
Neither.
the thing is, that wouldn't happen if you both didn't see each other as like an equal, as like, if you couldn't nourish that in each other, if you were
Mhm.
trying to constantly be like, if only she was more or less of this, because then even the clients coming in wouldn't feel that synergy. But it's like beautiful to see that dynamic. And I love that business has been my biggest reflection for relationships, because you get to play that dance with your relationships within your business as well. The same shit
Mhm.
comes up. So it's beautiful to see that you can find that synergy.
I
Well,
know people always say like business is never personal. I'm like, wrong. Ugh, what a trash statement. Especially when you work with like when you're helping humans heal, essentially,
yeah,
at all calibers.
yeah. How can business not be personal? The only way it's not personal is when you cut everything out of it and just make it about money and make this. That's just people who are making decisions that they don't want to have to justify, like a
Mhm.
piece of anything. Of course, it's personal. You sometimes have to make decisions and do things that might ruffle feathers, or someone might get hurt, and they may not have, because they may not have the awareness that you have as an entrepreneur to what goes on behind.
Oh,
But
yeah, it's the biggest piece. I encourage, like, my leadership team to ask me questions, right? Because I'm a visionary, and I know that to a T. I'm like, I'll do things or make decisions where they're like, "What
what
the
the fuck?
fuck are you doing?" I'm like, "No, no, no. I see the overhead. Like, I see the overhead 10 miles down, and you
Yeah.
see 2." And then we'll, like, hit halfway through, and they're literally like, "Oh my god, there it is." I'm like,
So
"There it is. That's why I'm a leader. It's okay."
absolutely leading, yeah, it's just beautiful. It's so beautiful to watch your journey, because we just kind of like pinball into each other here and there and like come back together, and it's like, oh my god, what's going on? Okay, great, good for you, da da da, go on our way. But it's so beautiful to see the shifts and the growth and like the expansion that happens in between and the impact, and hear the people in the community that come into my business, um, or friends that use your facility, and just like hear all that's going on. And it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful. And, just to hear people who their kids need support. And then it's like, I'm about to be like, hey, do you know about? And they're like, actually, Kyla's helping me push for this. And she's just like, the way she speaks and da da da. And I'm like, yeah, that's Kyla.
Yeah, so now I'm stepping into like a whole different realm of myself because so for the long time of the too much piece also came the boredom piece. So my husband he would never use the words too much. Never, ever, ever. Because he knows that's where it'll get him. And he has asked me questions before that are similar to that was, if it's not too much, is anything ever enough? And that sometimes gets thrown around a lot with strong
Ooh,
women as well. And then like part of that for me is just like also getting to know it's for myself, it's all about the journey. It's never about the end. So like my journey with my business was out of control. And it was just like, I want to say hurdle. So people always say too in femininity, like everything should feel easy. And
no,
I think that's also a crock of shit. So it's like what I did was some super hard shit, a lot of it with ease. And I think that worked well for me in a way as I was like changing laws and legislation and really going against the grain on a lot of like stigmatism associated to childcare or family services in my business. But that momentum and that like game or story was super exciting and liberating for me as a woman.
right.
And um some of that super hard shit was incredibly hard, but some of those pieces inside there I did with ease.
You have those moments of remindings, probably. It's like, I can feel it. It's like, I think a lot of people will change course. And I've been in that part of my journey where I thought it was the feminine in me coming and being like, I'm not forcing things anymore. But the fact is that we do need that. Like, I have this, that defined heart feels it. It's like, this is worth fighting for.
That's what it is.
Is not the universe saying course correct and go this way and find a place where you just flow down the fucking river. Because then you don't even know where you're going. Like, you don't always need to know where you're going, but you don't just like take the path of least resistance all the time. I don't think that is a fair statement, because I don't think you and I would have, either of us, gotten anywhere in our like emotional journey, business journey, any of it. You can't just.
No, and what I've come to terms with is like hard shit isn't always resistance either. It's like
No,
I subconsciously have made decisions with my gut and my sacral without even knowing what that meant. So when I wasn't fucking around when I told you that the government was suing me. So before I got into a place of having the opportunity to help co-create legislation with ministry, I had the government show up at my house because I was still operating childcare at a 24-hour caliber, which was like a no-no.
of course you.
And they served me with lawsuit papers. They're like, we're going to take you to court. We're going to sue you for $250,000.
Right.
And like that wasn't a great fucking feeling for
That's
me.
a good
That is clearly some heavy resistance where, you know, I want to say 98% of the people around me said, you got to stop, man. You've got to just stop. Like, this is the end of your rope. You've done as much as you can. And it was the gut inside me that was like, mm-mm. It was just a simple, mm-mm.
You
You
know
got
how.
to go forward. You got to go forward. And it was like noticing that there wasn't resistance in my body. So like
Exactly.
and I think that's where sometimes people get misconstrued. Like resistance in an outside external realm is very different than the resistance in your body. And I just kept having the feeling like, no, it's going to be hard, but you're going to go, you're going to go, you're going to keep going to go. Where, if I would have abided by the outside external realm of, just stop, you're too far in, it's too much, it's too much, it's too much. I wouldn't have been able to progress into that space whatsoever. And when I had made the decision to continue and what you would call fight against that lawsuit, surrender took place, which I also think is a part of both masculine and feminine energy. But it was like understanding and knowing the knowledge of what I needed to do to fight forward, but also opening myself up to receiving the greatness through this journey. So there may have been a lot of doing associated to like the physical realm of what needed to be done, but I just had unwavering faith that I was going to receive what I needed in these moments to carry me through. And like miracles took place.
Yeah, that
Um,
is the magic of the feminine. Like we know, even if we're doing in the physical realm and in our masculine, there is this synergy that's happening and we fucking know and we can't describe it. And people look at us, especially the masculine will look at us and be like, the smart masculine looks at you and is like, I don't get it, but I know.
mhm.
But it is, there's just this infusing of like, I don't know, but I know.
That's exactly what it is. And that's part of like where I saw like healthy masculine with my spouse and my first husband. So like I live a very creative dynamic with blended families.
Love.
Um, I also love it. I hope to continue to model that. So like my current husband and my first husband are very close. We co-parent all of our families together. My first husband has two other children, and you know both these men are my biggest fan and want to see me succeed to the 10th degree in what we're doing. And I'm not saying this relationship happened overnight, but they just both, they really do co-create and work so hard to carry those synergies together to like build the foundation of what family culture we want to see and model for our own children so we can continue that generational pattern moving forward. And when I was faced with this extreme resistance with the government and then starting my business and like, I don't know, having money literally fall out of the sky for me to continue to move forward and pay tens of thousands of dollars of lawyers, it's exactly what you said. Both these men, especially my husband, said, I don't understand, but like, what do I need to do to serve? And that is when like the scaffolding built around me to allow me to rest through this journey really took place.
Right.
Yeah.
Rest
Mhm.
is a relative term, I believe.
Uh-huh. It is a relative term.
It's so beautiful. I just feel like everywhere you go, I mean, of course, bring light, but bring this like inspiration and opportunity for people to pick up on this energy that you bring of like, it's alchemy, it's the visionary, it's the muse, it's all of it. And you're just like, you know, I don't remember when we first met, but I believe it was kind of when I was first starting Saluna.
Mhm.
And like, you were one of those people that just gave me this ball of energy and was like, here, what do you want to create without having to say anything? And then dropping people in my world that was like, I think I want to do this. Or I think I want to move here. Or like, and then these people, you just drop them in my world and they were just like opportunity. And I don't think you consciously do it. I think it's just who you are. Like you just,
It is. It is good.
yeah, there's a flash flood warning. I'm quite aware of.
It is. So I was unconscious. I'm more conscious of that now, and it's like a piece of dopamine and excitement
Right.
because community connection is my jam.
Yeah.
It is like as much as we're built to be individualists, we're also built to have tribes. And I think that um the gifts or space that you open for humans allows men and women to flourish into the direction they want to go. That's one of my it's something that I'm most satisfied in you is you've never paved my own path, Krystal. All you've done is create a space to allow me to see all different dirt roads to help navigate what one I did want to pave.
Ooh.
And I think that's like missing sometimes in the mentorship community or the coaching community is like
And the
it
practitioner.
comes down to one model doesn't, yes, or ever fits all. And it's like, thank you for you showing up the way you do, which is modeled to me, knowing that I have now been given the space to do whatever and whenever. And when I give you a small piece of insight, that you're really able to expand on that for me to allow me to know, like, is this something I want to dabble into? Not that I contemplate a whole lot because I don't. I don't know if that's a thing or a bad thing, but um, at least that space is given. Um, no is very resistant to me. It's like probably a trigger something internally. I don't know what it is, but the moment somebody tells me no, I'm like, "Ew, gross! Don't do that."
Yeah, me too.
Um,
First, like, no, I was told many times in my life, and I just went down a path just to, even though it wasn't an aligned path, I went down the path
no,
again
no,
to be like, I'll show you,
I know.
which is not purposeful. So I think that's part of my practice over the years too. It's like I can tell people what to do, but they don't do it anyways. So for the most part,
Mhm,
and if they do, they don't get the same experience if they go and like
mhm.
live it and embody it. And so I think it's really simple. I mean, it's been my hardest learning to shut the fuck up and like let people live and not do things on the timeline that we think they could. But thank you for reflecting that back, because sometimes it's a piece that actually drives my practitioners or people in my world crazy, because they're like, I know you see what I should do or what. And I'm like, that's of no value, because what I see is actually just my own perception. Also, like, I don't know. I'm not God. I don't have it all laid out. It's just one way that I think you could go to get it done really efficiently. Yeah.
Sit it on your table. I know you're feeling and seeing things. Spit it out. Sometimes I want the easier route.
Yes. I agree. Yeah. But
But it is. I believe every experience takes place for a reason.
for
That's
sure.
how we grow into those
And if
spaces.
people want it spit out, it's like, okay, like, I'm like that. I'm ready. When I find my people, I'm like, I know you have a shortcut for me. Can you show me that? But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's our own journey. And I think as I expand as well into my own journey, I am more willing. Like, I used to just sit in the silence and be like, you have the answer. Because I do believe it's like, you go into hypno and you go into these things, and people do. It's sitting there waiting for us if we have the space for it. But then there's the reality that we don't always, like, I mean, I have the luxury of, I mean, it's always a catch 22 because we want what we don't have. But it's like, I do have the luxury of, like, sitting in Coronado and having days to contemplate at the ocean and nobody in my sphere to muddy up my energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, yeah, I want somebody to just allow me to find, but I'm also learning that there's many ways to get there, and sometimes people just want the answer, but it's not usually satisfying because you give them the answer, and there is a piece that just has to be embodied and understand and, like, fully live that experience.
It's the action associated. I
Yeah.
always say this to my staff. It's like one thing that I've worked through a long time is I see lots of potential or intention
Yes.
with people all the time. And I'm constantly pushing, like, I see your potential. I see your potential.
Yeah.
I have this beautiful somatic therapist, Chelsea, and she always tells me, like, you can't, you may see it, but these people may not see their own potential. And you can't force or make things happen
Totally.
for your staff. Like, don't fix everything you see or what you think you're fixing, because you're most definitely not fixing. And
Yeah.
is the action associated to intention? Um, that sometimes I see a leg on that also ties into the feminine and masculine. It's like sometimes women that come in with just a lot of intention and no action can be deemed more feminine than those
I,
individuals
yeah.
that take action. Yes.
It's tough. I mean, it's not tough.
Mhm.
Like, you just got to be in the right circles and, like, but sometimes it is that piece of shutting the fuck up. I have people that come,
Mhm.
oh, they think I don't know shit. And then there's people like you who are like, fucking tell me, I know you see and know what's going
Wow. Yeah, I know.
on. But yeah, it's so much more beautiful to watch somebody land in it. And I know that from my own experience with my mentors. Like, I know you told me this 10 times, but it doesn't
Mhm.
matter until we're like, we took the action, we had the experience, and now we can embody that wisdom. Otherwise, it's useless. So I guess it's also like, it can be empty words, right? It's just like, I think we've all had those mentors or those people where it's you're receiving probably very beautiful wisdom or knowledge. You're paying for really for something that somebody else would be getting so much a lot of different information out of. But
Mhm.
if you're not at that part in your journey to embody it or, like, have the somatic experience with it, um, and feel it and have the space, then it doesn't mean anything. So I think that's part of my practice. Sometimes it does drive people nuts, and I know it, and I'm like, you're gonna.
Mm-mm. No one gives a fuck. Mm-mm.
Yeah, no, it's like going into hypno and be like, oh my God, that was so beautiful. I saw what happened. And I'm like, you didn't let any of that into your body. You didn't literally just came for a hit of, like, oh my God. And I see that so much in the spiritual community. It's like, oh my God, that person knew that, or I got to meet this, or see this, or felt this. But there was no somatic embody, like, no actual shift. So,
So that would be a question too, particularly for women, is how many women in this generation are actually in their bodies?
yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I know for years I wasn't. And then I had a practitioner say, it's like when I treat you, you just leave the room. I'm like, yeah, of course I do. You're, like, touching me, and, like, I don't want to experience this. You do the work. So, I've had beautiful women, like, hold space and hold containers for me and help me grow and heal. And yet, the most impactful women in my life have been the Spitfires who call me up and out to do it myself, to go to actions, to have the conversations in my life, to speak my truth, to drive my business in the direction that my soul is actually calling me to, not what, you know, my patterning has made me want to be in the past, that people pleaser piece, and what I thought that was like softening into my feminine when it wasn't at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my experience, has been allowing the dynamic or the belief in the feminine to really evolve and start to embody all of it with myself and the people that I pay and allow to be in my field. So yeah, thanks for being one of those.
Same, sister.
Anything you want to wrap up with, or like any final thoughts that are, any little threads that are pulling at you?
Like, I don't think there's any threads other than just, I think when you use the word embodied, it really means something. And that last piece of how present we actually are in our bodies, particularly as women, against the societal norm of what femininity has been preached about, which is typically the sit down and shut up type. Um, is that it doesn't always or have to look that way. And then, like, what's sitting in the bottom of my chest when it comes to you, Krystal, is allowing healthy masculine men near your
Yeah.
circle.
I yeah, it's a beautiful feeling. I've had like, this is what I love about life. I went down to the pier a couple weeks ago and I turned around and this beautiful 6'5" man is just like waving at me, and I'm like looking around like, who are you looking for? And then he asked me a question about my dog, and then we both just were like, what are you doing? Like, where are you walking? Where are you going? And so we ended up going for like an hour-long walk. And that was a beautiful shift of like, oh, just keep living. Life will put it on your lap.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was this beautiful, healthy masculine, and definitely not like, he was 50, had 3 kids, just going through a divorce, was like excited to be single. And I was like, oh, like, you're such a motherfucker with like, you know, but it was beautiful to just walk beside that energy and be like, yes to all of this. The way that he
Mm-hmm.
moved through his divorce, the way he showed up and communicated with his partner when things were going sideways, the way he shows up as a father, the way he shows up as he's in commercial real estate, like, just, it was all really beautiful to lean into. So yes, I'm learning. And then these other men are put on my path that are contrasting that. And it's just fun to sit in and be like, okay, life, but I'm allowing them in my sphere. Growth.
Yes, it is. Yes, I
Just
do better in partners. That's it's also like just, I'm a split definition. I process best when we're in our own sense of self. It's one of been like the best pieces of growth for me and my current husband. Like, talk about trials and tribulations, like we have fucking been there. But
oh,
he is the true testament of growth, understanding, and sitting in masculinity. Because
right.
part of that is becoming vulnerable with
Yeah.
yourself, with the level of communication that takes place. And then part of that softer piece of vulnerability and my femininity is allowing and making space for him to sit there.
Right. That's a beautiful piece that, I learned this year. Sometimes you don't have the awareness on these things until
Mhm.
they're done, and you reflect back and you're like, oh fuck, yeah, okay, maybe there's spaces where I'm still learning to like really soften into my feminine. Um, but you know what? It's not going to happen by someone telling me that I'm not enough in my feminine. That's for fucking. It's the moment,
Or too much. Don't be
yeah,
too fucking much, all right?
yeah, no, it's in those moments of vulnerability when you're like, oh, okay, this person needs this softness from me in this space to realize that you can't force safety. Um, yeah, I had a thought connected to that, but it's gone. But yeah, I'm learning to really love that healthy masculine energy, and I'm calling it in. I'm calling it in. I sit at the beach and I'm like, all right, like, bring it on my platter, because I'm a triple split definition. So I love community. It's like being in community, but also it is that peace. I don't care what anybody says that like, oh, just enjoy your single time. There's pluses to both sides. It's like, I know there's something in my being that will never feel. It's not that I can't find happiness within myself. It's not that
Mhm.
I've gone to the depths of my soul with myself. There is just this piece of me that's like, and I just want to do life with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So
No,
thanks
I
for seeing
understand
me
that.
and calling that, and I'm gonna claim that.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. But anyways, thanks so much for having this conversation with me. I just adore you as a human, what you're doing. It blows me away. I can't comprehend the impact that you're creating because I mean, I still need to come in and see your space, but it's like when I hear you speak, it's just like she doesn't even know the vastness of the impact that she's having, but I can't even grasp it. And I'm just so proud to watch you and to be connected with you as you go out and do this and really own who you are and the impact you have as a leader, as a business owner, as a mom, as a wife, as like you're just someone that I hold so fucking close and I'm so proud of. So thanks for coming and jamming with me
Thanks, Krystal.
very deeply. And we'll end it there. Thanks for joining us today. That is it. Be courageous, be bold, let anyone down but yourself along the way as you confidently activate or trigger the correct players in your pinball game. And with an open and defined heart, I encourage you to go forward with curiosity and create the depth and satisfaction in the entirety of your life, the entirety of your career, the entirety of the relationships that your soul came here craving, seeking, destined to create. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love it if you left a review below. You can reach me at thekrystaleffect.com or on Instagram, the.krystal.effect. We'll leave that below.